Welcome back, traders and investors. We have on the line with us Christian Tharp. He is a MarketFi maven and author of 5-Star Stock Watch. Christian, welcome. How you doing this Friday?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been quite the week, huh?
Yeah, yeah, to say the least. Last week it looked all doom and gloom in the market, and this week it's all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, exactly. So what's on your radar? What have you been watching? I'm sure you have some specific focus you would prefer to talk about today.
Sure, absolutely. I think when you look at kind of the volatility that the market's been going through over the past month or so, it seems like ground zero for the conversation is always what the overall market is doing. And for the past week or two, we had been watching some key breakout points on the Dow and the S&P. Specifically, this week we had an area on the Dow around 17.7. We felt like if we got through that, that would open the gates to a run to switching indexes, the S&P. So right now, me and a lot of our members and followers and students are kind of watching 2065 on the S&P 500, which is a number that has kind of sent the S&P back down the last few times it's gotten up there. So with today's jobs number coming out, seemed to giving a little bit of juice to the market. We're kind of eagerly anticipating maybe a break and a run to new highs.
We are approaching that right here, right now, live, because we're at 2063 at the highs of the move here. So they're going to test that resistance right here while we're speaking to you, Christian. I know you like to follow the biotechs here, and the biotechs have come back here the last couple of days very nicely. What are your thoughts here on the biotechs overall first, and then any individual ones you're looking at?
Sure, absolutely. I tell you, biotech, lately it's been, sometimes if any of your listeners have been watching biotech in the market, there's been these days where the market's been up and biotech's been down, and then the market's been down, biotech's been up. So it's been a little bit of a challenging trading environment for it. But all in all, biotech has hung on pretty well when you compare it to, say, whether it be the Dow or the S&P or otherwise. So I think the trend in biotech remains good, strong, upward, onward, until we see something otherwise. So, but you're absolutely right. I mean, they were getting hit pretty hard last week. Finally, Wednesday we saw a turnaround. We felt like we like to monitor the IBB, the iShares Biotech ETF.
Yep.
And we felt like we had a good looking reversal on Wednesday, and we thought if we could get through 315 on the IBB, that should finally relieve some of that selling pressure on biotech. And of course, we saw that yesterday. So we definitely like, the industry right now. I think it looks great. There's one stock in particular that we thought made a move yesterday that was worth noting, and that was Pacira, PCRX. We thought that we've been monitoring that, and I'd actually written about that for Benzinga. I think might have been earlier this week. Almost like as if everyone was watching or reading that. We had been eyeballing 110 as a resistance area on that stock, and we thought, here over the last week, Pacira has tried, repeatedly to get through that and couldn't do it. So, our view was that if Pacira could hold that mark, that should open up the gates for a move much higher. So yesterday, obviously, the stock has done that, close to 112, and so we love that name for people to look at. And then we've got some of our steady eddies that we always love, like Anacor, ANAC. That's been one of those ones that, regardless of market pullbacks and whether it be 1%, 4%, 5%, that's been on a nice steady uptrend since June of last year. And so that's a name that, some of us, like myself, like to trade. Others like to, maybe hold things for a while. I think something like an Anacor would look good. It would look good for anyone that likes to just kind of hold on to something. It's got a nice little trend line of support that it's been kind of climbing since July. If you're looking for a better entry, that trend line is kind of approaching the 33.5, 34 area. So that's probably where we would look to get in, but certainly a name that's been doing pretty well.
Ace in the chat's talking about Intercept Pharmaceuticals, ICPT. Do you follow this one?
Yes, I do. Actually, that was a name that we thought made a great move last week on a piece of news that came out on a trial. But those of you that are big fans of technical analysis like I am, you'll probably see a pretty good-looking trend line of resistance on that stock. Pretty much, dates back to inception here. But if you look at your August high, you look at your November high, kind of put yourself a little resistance there. You'll notice that's exactly where we stalled at the end of January, pulled back, and news popped us above it. Sure enough, on the pullback, it's that exact trend line that we bounced back off of. So we love the fact that the stock seems to have, made its pullback from the news, moving higher. Love it around 200. Wouldn't see any reason to believe it wouldn't make it at least up to its 200-day around 225 or so. And then up above that, I mean, I would say sky's the limit from there.
You got a gap in the chart there too. Looking at the gap down day back on November the 6th when the stock gap down from 250 down to 200. So a lot of air up there. If you get above that high there that we set just a few days ago, 210, it looks like it's all air up to 240.
Exactly. We love the move to attempt to fill that, and we like the 200 as our first marker. We like 225 ish where the 200-day is, and we think we can get through that and probably fill that gap up to around 250. And from there, who knows with the stock, but we love the move that it made over the last week and just kind of the break out of that downtrend. And then I'm a big fan of confirmation of the prices I watch. So the fact that you watch that trend line, you're always wondering, hey, am I drawing that or is the market drawing that? When I can see a stock kind of break out, come back and retest that line, it's kind of like a pat on the back saying, yep, that line was important. We thought it mattered. So getting that bounce we think is a good sign for the stock.
One big biotech that can't seem to catch a bid here, or if it does catch it, it seems to just fall off afterwards, is Gilead. They had the Hep C concerns where they were losing a contract to AbbVie there back in December that really knocked the stock down from 110 all the way down to 85 bucks. It slowly climbed back there, and then the earnings report disappointed here, and the stock actually traded down again here, back under $100. We've got a downgrade from Credit Suisse this morning. They're cutting just because the Hep C pricing they're concerned about too. What are your thoughts here on Gilead?
Sure. Well, first thing I'll say is the minute you started talking about the stock that can't catch a break, I started typing in GILD. So I knew exactly where you were headed with that stock because it is certainly a name that you would think Biotech doing well. You would think the big dog Gilead would be doing well also. And every time it seems to give this sign that it's recovering, then something like, as you're mentioning, comes along and sends it back down again. I know that when if I'm somebody looking to, enter a position, longer term on Gilead, I probably would stay away from it unless it got back above that 110 area. That's a number that obviously the stock stalled at in December or a couple times back in September.
Yeah.
So this choppiness in between the 100 and 110 or the 95 and 110 area, that's going to kind of chop you up a little bit. I like, a hold of 100. We had actually talked about this in the Biotech Trader yesterday about, obviously everybody wanting to know about Gilead, and I said, look, I probably wouldn't touch it unless it at least held 100. But at this point, all this jumping around all over the place, I'd probably rather just sit tight, find something else, and see if that stock can ever get above 110.
What about Biogen? It made a new all-time high yesterday, finally broke over 400, had 3-4 highs in the same area around 395, was struggling to get through it, and then yesterday finally broke out here. It's trading just back slightly down here this morning, just under 400. What are your thoughts here on Biogen as it made a new all-time high yesterday?
Sure. Yeah. Whenever Biogen comes up, the first thing I always think about is it's a stock that I try not to trade anymore. Because Biogen and I just don't seem to get along. Every time
There's
I
always
think
one of those stocks. Everybody's got one of those stocks.
Yeah, it's a choppy. I mean, you can kind of see that too if you look at December and January. Just I'm not really a day trader. A lot of money to be made as a day trader with this stock, but it's trying to really capture the short-term moves. It's been rocky, but it's been slowly grinding its way higher. Obviously, hit new highs in mid-January. I think at this point, when you cross a number like 400, you'd probably think higher prices are coming, and this is certainly one of those names that. Those that are looking to get into one, especially if you're wanting to get into one of those brand names and hold it for a while, I would think this would probably be a better alternative than Gilead right now. And I like it, assuming it stays at 400 or higher.
Do you think it's run too far, though? If we look back, I'm just looking at a weekly chart and just trying to give this a lot of color. 2009, 2010, the stock was 50 bucks. Now it's $400 here 4 or 5 years later. Obviously, the fundamentals in the company have just improved dramatically since that time, but it's basically up tenfold in the last 5 years. Do you think it's too much, or do you think there's still more gas in the tank?
I kind of, if you ask me to choose, I'd kind of be probably in the former there, where it does seem like it's come awfully far. But I feel the same way about Biotech, where we've had a really nice run. Again, if somebody looks at that Biotech ETF, it's just up and away all the time,
Yeah.
and it does make you nervous. But on the flip side, you say to yourself, well, I'm going to keep riding this as long as it goes. But every time I think that Biotech's finally going to get a washout, like maybe we had in the March, April period of time last year, nope, it's only a 2 or 3 day, and then up and away we go again. So. It's one of those things where I'm not going to fight it. But if I'm looking around across my landscape of these 40 or 50 biotech stocks that I monitor, when I see something reaching straight up in the air, somewhat like Biogen is starting to do here, it does tend to make me somewhat nervous about, as a trader, am I going to be the last one to the party?
What about oil? Do you follow the oil markets at all, Christian? Because everybody's been talking, it's been chopping around. It seems like 7 or 8% every single day. Some people think the bottom is in oil. Other people think this is just a dead cat bounce and it's going to head right back down. What are your thoughts on oil?
Sure, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I believe last time I was here with you guys, we talked about oil, and I believe at that time we had talked about if oil broke the 55 mark, that my expectation is if that mark had broken would be a fall to at least around 40. So obviously we did break the 55, didn't quite get to 40. I think we got around to the 43s or something like that. I don't know that I've seen anything that leads me to believe that the bottom's in. I think it's way too early to say that. Just like when a commodity, a stock, or a market sells off for a day or two or three, everybody starts calling for a correction, right? I think it's too early to say. You need so much more. It's quite possible. What I can tell you, it looks like definitely there's a bounce that has some legs to it. It's going to be a volatile bounce when you're coming off, such a nasty slide. But what I saw in oil that kind of gave me a little bit of a hint that, okay, regardless of how far this bounce goes, it looks like it's got something, was if you look at oil, on a weekly scale, for like, 10, 15, whatever, 20 straight weeks, oil just kept kind of forming these lower highs every week, lower highs every week, lower highs every week. And that's one of the things I like to monitor to see if something is kind of turning around a little bit, is when you see that trend. So, I mean, if you look at it, just every single low of the week or high of the week is lower and lower and lower. So when you look at that reversal where we finally this week are kind of breaking out of that trend, leads me to believe oil's got some legs to it. How high, I think, is a tough call. Could we make it back up to 60? Could we make it back up to 70? I would think that's perfectly possible, but I don't know that I see anything here that leads me to believe that the low is in.
Christian, Estemize actually recently came out with a blog that it said while the biotech boom is still in the first inning, you are our own personal biotech expert, so I need to get your opinion on this. What inning do you think the biotech boom is in right now?
Oof. Well, I guess it depends when we talk about when we use that analogy, what game we're talking about here versus if we're talking about the inning of one game or the inning of all games. Because I think biotech, I think has a long life ahead of it. But I think sometimes you want to be somewhat realistic about where you are. So when you look at, I believe the last I looked is if we can manage to eke out a new high here in February in the markets, this will, I believe, if I'm correct, be the third longest bull market in history. Biotech has benefited very well from that. So I do find it hard to believe that we would be in the first inning if we're talking about like one game, one bull market. It would seem that we would be a little later in the game for that. However, if you're talking about, obviously, multi-year down the road, I would think certainly I don't see the biotech industry going out of favor anytime soon in that regard. But if you're looking in the here and now, I would question whether or not we're just starting to move, especially when you look at the last 6-7 years of the market.
We've had Christian Tharp on the line. He's a MarketFi maven and the author of the 5-Star Stock Watch. If you do want to get an edge on biotech stocks, I highly recommend you follow Christian. He's got some great insight, great analysis, amazing technical analyst. Christian, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We always appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a great day.
Cheers.
Thanks, Christian.